said, yes, get someone. Yes, I would have to if you can come up with some way I can protect it, that would be great. And rather than me going out and getting it.
That's right. That's nice. But the one thing I have is fighting here is a flower. It's not lingering, it's not the same thing. But what about you might have to
we didn't have rain. But I'm sure that was so hard. So dry. I spent so much time just listening to them. I shouldn't have. No, I know. Yeah, I just do it just to get them going. Okay. So impressive. Okay. There's a guy who's had a tree. Well, there's a lot of people. I'm happy to do it, but I'd really like to do a check. I'll be in touch.
It is delightful to see you all here. I am thrilled to pieces with the crowd. I am thrilled to pieces there are so many new people here. How many people are here for the first time? Wow, look at that. Awesome. Well, our membership has been growing by leaps and bounds. We now have, as of yesterday, 155 members, which is absolutely spectacular. So thank you all for joining. We got a busy day today. First, everybody turn off your cell phones. Everybody thinks mine won't ring, but somebody's always does. And then you go, oh no. Okay, did you have a good time at social time? Yes. Yes. Sure. How many people brought their lunch? Terrific. At least half of you. That's great. We are going to have this before every meeting now, because the structure of our meeting really doesn't allow a lot of social time, just to meet other members, talk, just whatever you want to do to socialize. So every meeting we will we will open the room at 12:15. You can come and have lunch or a snack or just talk or whatever you want to do, and then we'll start the business meeting at 1 or a little after. Okay, back in June, we all took a survey. Well, 44% of our members took a survey, and thank you for those who did. On average, across the state, only 29% of chapter members completed the survey, but 44% of our chapter members completed the survey, so good work, everybody. I'm going to give you, there was results in the newsletter, the October newsletter, but I just want to hit a couple of highlights. We were the 5th oldest respondent age at 68.4 years. That means there were at least 4 chapters whose people were older than ours, which is great, because up until just a few months ago, Charlotte County had the oldest population in the state. But we've now been knocked down to 2nd place, so we're not the oldest anymore. And thanks to all the young people who are bringing our age down now. Yeah, we want to. Okay, for the society across the board, 71% don't volunteer for one reason or another. They're working, or their schedule doesn't fit, or they don't get out anymore. 28% of mangrove people are volunteers, and about 10% of our members are on the board or in another chairmanship. Okay, this one absolutely blew me away. As far as meeting time, 49% of our chapter preferred mornings, weekday mornings. How many of you here would prefer weekday mornings to weekday afternoons? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
What do you consider a morning?
Do we have a break?
10 o'clock.
7 of those present here.
They did mention evenings too.
Yeah, they mentioned evenings, they also had a category that was midday, and I'm not sure, maybe 1 o'clock falls at midday, I'm not sure what that was. But it was about 25%, and people had multiple answers, about 25% for midday, 25% for afternoon, and about 25% for evenings. So evenings were not that popular, and if you combine midday and afternoon, you know, I guess we're about 50-50 on morning or afternoon. Top interest areas for the society across the board, across the state, are landscaping and ecosystems. For mangrove, it was landscaping and plant identification, with ecosystems coming in third. Top activities across the state were field trips, workshops, and speakers. Ours are field trip speakers and yard tours. And we haven't had yard tours lately, but we have at least one person who has volunteered per yard. So if any of you would like to volunteer your yard for a yard tour, we're going to try to get those started again sometime this year. If you've got a great garden that you're proud of, if you have a lot of native plants and they're all a mess, that's okay. You know, that's what native plants are. The strongest areas for sense of belonging and satisfaction, just with the organization across the state, are the chapter's contribution to our mission. I impact Florida through my chapter, and the chapter is important in my life. For Mangrove, the chapter contribution to the mission was first, it's important to my life is second, and the impact of Florida is third. And this is the category in which Mangrove scored above the society on most of the items. Okay. Here it is. I have to have color-coded papers. Plant Native Day volunteers. It is never too early to start thinking about Plant Native Day. Our Plant Native Day 2024 will be our 21st annual Plant Native Day. Even during COVID, we had a small, reduced visibility Plant Native Day. So we've had it 21 years running now. I've got a volunteer list here that I will just pass around. You can look at the categories. If you don't want to sign up today, trust me, you'll have more opportunities.
What is it exactly?
We sell native plants.
Okay.
That's the bottom line. This year, I believe we are actually going to have we're going to contract with a nursery to grow some plants. So we will have some nursery grown plants. We will have a nursery on site, and we will also have member grown plants. March 9th, Saturday, March 9th. It's the second Saturday in March, traditionally. Oh, and this year, we have these stylish, high fashion vests that all of our volunteers will be able to wear. So people who come to buy plants will be able to pick you out from the crowd. These were just terribly expensive, so we treasure them deeply. Okay, grants. Bobby, did you want to say a few words about grants?
Yeah, just real fast. We have had grants in the past, $500 public grants for public establishments, HOAs, etc. And last year we opened that up for individuals, which means individual homeowners could apply for $100 to help establish their yards again for with some native plants. They lost their hand usually. So we received 47 applications this year. Of that, 16 grants were completed, verified, and paid. Okay, so this year, So that's, means us, those people are gonna have all native, gonna have native plant gardens, so that's great. This year, we are not going to be doing the private grants anymore, but we will be doing the public. So if you have an HOA or a civic association, something like that, churchyard, any public area that the public sees, it's a up to $600 reimbursement for you to purchase native plants as long as it's on land that the public can access. Like an HOA, it would be the community garden area, community area. So you can go onto our website if you're interested. Don't buy plants, we have to approve the list and everything, but it's a reimbursement thing. But check out the applications on our webpage. Fill out, and we're accepting them now. It's a grant that started October 1st. And I just want to say thank you to the grant committee this past year, which was Jane Wallace, who has moved away since, Jane Neville, Cheryl Pickle, Laura Walsh, Joan McGowan, me, Linda Manley, and Willie Nelson. So hopefully y'all will apply for some grants this year.
Thank you, Bobby. On the agenda, I know there aren't enough for everybody. My gosh, I'm so thrilled with the crowd. But anyway, on the bottom of the agenda, there are coming events, and also, fresh off the press, we have our trifold calendar again. I just picked these up from the printer this morning. They have our meetings and the program topics. They have part of the walks are in here. The sunset strolls are in here because all those are scheduled for the year. There is at least one walk for every month, but we will be adding more walks. So to learn the details and all the up-to-date information, you have to go to our website, which is also on the back of the calendar here. And there is a blog, and there is also a calendar on the website. So that's where you find all the latest as we schedule new walks for every month.
Don't forget Facebook.
Yes, we have Facebook. Ann takes care of our Facebook. Thank you. She always puts our events on Facebook. And after the walks, there are usually photos and descriptions of where we went and what we saw. So be sure to join our Facebook page. We actually have about 3 times as many members on our Facebook page as we do in our chapter. So if you're on the Facebook page, you really want to join the chapter too. These are in the back where Dave is standing. Pick one up on your way out. We hope to have these available at every meeting all year long. Now, next year, I am not going to repeat as president. I've served for 2 years. I would like to see presidents do a 2-year rotation. It takes you a year just to get your feet under the desk, but that second year is so much fun. Yes, it's a lot of fun. Now, somebody suggested I should make a list of the minimum duties of president so people would understand that, yes, you can be president. And the term is not president for life. There for a while, my immediate predecessor, Lois, thought that it was president for life. She was here for 6 years, and by the time she left, nobody wanted to be as tired as Lois was. And we miss her terribly, but she was so anxious to get rid of the presidency, she moved back to Michigan. I'm not moving back to any place, but I am giving up the presidency. So we need interested people to talk to me, to apply, talk to anybody in the chapter. I will be sending out a mass email, in a few days, and it will have a brief list of the things that the president needs to do, at a minimum. If there are things on that list that you don't think you can do, either don't do them or assign them to somebody else. As Lois told me so many times, we don't have to do everything we're doing now. the world will not end if we, eliminate this or if we eliminate that, but we really need a president. We don't want this absolutely vibrant, growing, energetic chapter to crash and burn because nobody wants to be president. No, that's not how it works. Don't be afraid of the position. Just don't think, I can't do what I can't do. Yes, you can. Get yourself some help. A vice president would help. My vice president has been my husband, even though he's not elected, and no, you can't have him. But find yourself a friend, be co-presidents, or one of you be president and one of you vice president, or assign half a dozen vice presidents to, to take on tasks that you don't want. Somebody be president. Okay. Now, our speaker today is our very own Kristen Hoff-Schmidt. She is, let's see now, she currently works at Florida Native Plants Nursery in Sarasota, which is a dream job for so many of us. She served for a year as the president of the Venice Area Audubon Society, and then we snagged her for our secretary. She is a Florida master naturalist and a volunteer for Sarasota County Parks. Before moving to Florida in 2021, she was a legal social worker in Wisconsin. And she's going to talk about plants for birds, native plants for birds. Kristen, come on down.
Hello, welcome. It's so great to see so many people today. We have a small microphone, but can everyone hear okay? All right. And I've also got some video, and hopefully all of these systems are going to work together, and it's just going to be magic. But we have two banks of lights. There's not a bank of light in the front, so we're going to dim both of them. But I will go ahead and get started. So this slide is funny, and I did it on purpose. I was searching and searching for images of birds and native plants here in Florida, and they're kind of hard to find. So if you're a good photographer, you've got a niche to fill. But this in this original photo, I think the bird was feeding on dianthus, and so I put in some coral honeysuckle, and I did that on purpose because that's kind of what we're doing, right? We're by promoting native plants, we want to, maybe take out ones that aren't native and make sure there's something that will actually nourish the animals and be useful and helpful in the environment. So intentionally a little clumsy Photoshoppy look here. So thank you for the introduction, Linda. So the perspective I'm going to bring to our presentation today is that of a newcomer to Florida, which I know a lot of people are, or a newcomer to gardening. I was a master naturalist, a master gardener in Wisconsin, but of course Florida is very different. And I also bring the perspective of a naturalist, kind of a generalist with ecological systems and a systems perspective. So I'm going to start by establishing some background, some kind of key concepts we need to think about. Then I'll have some examples of Florida native super plants or superstar plants. And then we'll have some time at the end where I would love to hear about your favorite plants for birds and your ideas about what we need to do to establish plants for birds. All right. So starting out with just some key concepts, and a lot of us may be familiar with this, but I know that reminders are important, and a lot of times we think of habitat just as those key basic needs of food and water, shelter, but space is a critical part of habitat that sometimes gets forgotten. There needs to be space to move around, to hunt, to find mates, to establish a territory, and reproduce. So space is a key part of that habitat concept. Also ecosystem. I'll be mentioning that word, but basically what I'm referring to is just a biological community that has all these complex interactions. So that's all kinds of things, all kinds of organisms, plants, animals, insects, and interacting with their physical environment, with the weather, with climate change, with everything. And the third one is biodiversity. And that is a critical part of all of this. We are losing biodiversity on the planet, and that has really grave consequences for all living things, and for being able to maintain a healthy ecosystem. I'm going to refer back to this image, so I'd like to see if you can kind of hold it in your head. I got it from University of Florida Extension, and it's a little bit funny. I think it, I don't know what this plant is. I don't think that's a Florida native. I don't think the person who drew it was maybe a native plants person or in the Florida context. But what I love about it, and what's so hard to capture in pictures and landscapes, are all of these elements. And so we're going to be talking about that, about how the high, medium, low, you have dense, you have rocks, you have logs, you have water. All these different elements are key to providing a good environment for birds here in Florida. So threats to birds and native plants, and all of us, frankly. I was trying to look up information about, what's the rate of habitat loss in Central Florida, things like that. The best thing I could come up with was this, which is just kind of an illustration of that. I think a lot of times graphics like this are powerful in terms of getting that message across. So this is from a presentation. This is a slide from the extension, and it shows the reddish-colored darkness sweeping across the land. In this case, urban land use, right? And this is an image from 2005, and this is from what it probably will look like in 2060. I think this is a really powerful illustration and just something to meditate on in terms of what does this mean in terms of what we all need to survive, in terms of native habitat, in terms of healthy ecosystems, in terms of biodiversity here in the state. And then, kind of stepping back and thinking about it in an even larger way, this is just an example of Central Florida. So what would this look like with the whole state? Or with other states in the US? Or if you're looking at all of North America, or if you're looking at the world? And just kind of think about what that's going to look like in terms of the importance of what we're talking about, what we're doing today. I'd also like to challenge you to think about a third panel. And so we'll be going back in time. So imagine there's a third one here, and the date underneath it is 1970. And what the change was from 1970 to now. And that will kind of lead us into our next slide. I have a short video, and I believe the sound will be okay, but I set up some closed captioning just in case it is not. So we'll go ahead and watch this. This is a video that, well, the website is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology.
Birds are part of our lives.
Okay.
They fill the air with song, inspire us with their beauty, and make our homes the most honest.
And thank you for your patience. I can see it on my screen, but I can't see it on that screen. Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
It winked for 1 second.
Yeah.
We love our fish.
This is really frustrating. I haven't used this before. Anybody has anything?
We can hear it okay, would that be all?
Maybe turn it around so we can see the picture.
No, I
Yeah,
can't
you
watch
have to
on
be
the
right
laptop.
down. That's one way to do it.
Okay, let's just.
Built into your presentation.
Birds are part of our lives.
Okay.
They feel we are so
settings and you look at which screen is displaying.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I would have needed to get this, it was showing before, so. Okay, all right.
There you go, it's up.
Yay, yeah, I mean, this is my slide, this isn't the presentation, but anyways, so I will just refer to it. The video by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, it has just a really powerful video about a study that was published in the journal Science in 2019 that shows that since 1970 in North America, they estimate about 3 billion birds are just gone. You know, the populations are dying off. 3 billion, and I know a lot of us, in some way, kind of know that, you know, because we used to always see, you know, people say that, oh, there used to always be so many birds here and so many birds there. The video is really interesting. I love this, you know, where it's just kind of dissolving and disappearing. I will try one more thing, and then I will.
Is that the website for the video? Check it out later.
Yeah, it is, and I can also send a link, but yeah, it's totally.
Is that not connect to the website from your computer?
You might have to take your PowerPoint off view or off presentation mode.
Sorry, it's hard to kind of keep here, and I wish this was.
There you go.
On the beach.
All right, yeah, let's just forget that. Okay, so what can we do? All right, what can we do? So advocates, so working on all levels. We really need to work at all levels, and our personal decisions matter, but when we talk about, you know, planting a native garden, planting a pollinator patch, we all know that that is going to make a difference. It's not quite enough. We also need to advocate at the systems level to enact change. And I think about this a lot. I live in Venice, and I live kind of nearest to the Gulf, and I think about, you know, some days when I'm not keeping calm and probably spending enough time in my garden, I think about, why am I planting natives here? Sea level rise and storm surges and saltwater intrusion, it's all going to be gone in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, who knows, right? But that's why I wanted to sort of have a casual presentation today and wear my keep calm and my ears shirt, because that's what we need to do, is not freak out and, you know, not despairing, but calmly organizing and thinking about what are the steps we need to take to act and to do things that, in addition to planting natives, that will contribute to that difference and add synergy to that difference. So climate action. So starting out in a very big picture, clearly the climate is one of the biggest threats to birds, to native plants, to humans. And so we need to look at all the different levels, local, state, and national, that we need to advocate and supporting climate action organizations. There is so much to learn and so much to know about this. We know about all the changes that are happening, and every time I read about it, there's just something more. When I was doing some research about this presentation about hummingbirds, I was reading about, well, one of the sources I read said that one of the biggest challenges or threats to hummingbird survival is flowering phenology, which is the timing of natural events. So climate change really messes with the timing of natural events. And so if a hummingbird that's migrating is going to arrive after flying for long distances at a place with no flowers, it's gonna die, and that's what's happening. The phenology of all these natural events is getting mixed up, and the living organisms in those systems are suffering as a result of that. Changes in nectar availability, changes in blooming dates, changes in when seeds appear, all of these systems work together. Another thing that we've been talking about at the nursery, at Florida Native Plants Nursery, is how we need to think about our zones, our planting zones, which are kind of gardening and agricultural, and not so much ecosystem. But if you think about that way, do we want to consider only planting or really focusing on hurricane resistant, drought tolerant? Here we're near the top of zone 10A. Maybe we need to really stay in that, or maybe even think about 10B, because that's where it's going to be in several years. Conservation. There's so much we can do. Advocate for land conservation. We can't rebuild these things. We can't rebuild these ecosystems. Once they're gone, it's really difficult to reestablish them. So as part of the conversation of, what if we can transform part of our yard or part of our lawn into native plants, we also at the same time want to be doing everything we can to conserve native lands that are there, native plants that are existing in intact ecosystems and protecting those ecosystems. There are a lot of really wonderful conservation organizations to support, like Florida Native Plants Society and Audubon. Different Audubon societies are primarily conservation organizations that will help plants and birds. And so kind of funneling on down, we can actually create, or in some cases recreate habitat. You've probably heard all the buzz about rewilding and just flipping your lawn, and there's lots of fun things that people are doing related to that. Here in the Florida Native Plant Society in the Mangrove chapter, our theme for 2023 is Homegrown National Park, which is an idea based on the work of Doug Tallamy, Dr. Doug Tallamy, and the idea of what if the space that we have control over became a nurturing and beneficial space for all organisms, for birds, and for everything else. And how could that kind of turn the tables? If we think back to that map that we saw of that maroon wave kind of coming over Florida, if a lot of that had smaller natural areas that could make a difference. Also, talking about this, encouraging your friends, family, neighbors, local businesses, government, with the public spaces grant maybe, to plant natives and to support local native plant nurseries. So the benefits of native plants. I put this up here just because I think there's so many neat graphics that tell a story, and we all can be kind of like native plant ambassadors and keep telling this story to other people. This is from a study done by University of Massachusetts. And what it does is the first part compares native trees and non-native trees. So if you had a cherry tree and one was native and one was non-native, how many caterpillar species does it support? And so the overall effect is that you can see if you use a typical species that is native to your area versus a non-native, you'll have twice as many caterpillars. And caterpillars and birds are inseparable. If you've read Nature's Best Hope, a copy of the book is over there from Dr. Tommy, or other resources about that. It's a key source of concentrated protein for baby birds. And birds need caterpillars to survive. And so having caterpillars, having natives that support caterpillars is critical to this system functioning in a healthy way. I liked this graphic because it talks about just the percentages. If you have native plants in your yards, you'll have twice as many native birds. 9 times as many rare birds, butterflies, bees. And some people say bugs, but bugs are good. Bugs are very good. Another shirt that I considered wearing today has a little bee, like a little happy bee on it. And it says, "If we go, we're taking you with us," which is kind of like a harsh bottom line, but it's true, right? We can't exist without insects. I just think, I don't know if this is different in other areas because I guess it's not a representative sample, but I know that looking up information about insects in Florida is really interesting looking online. So if you type in like insects Florida, then most things that come up are all pest companies, kill, eliminate, you need to get rid of this, you need to get rid of that. And it's kind of horrifying. It's like they're a problem versus, something that is critical that we all need to have here. So talking about native plants, these are some good tips to talk up with folks. Again, insects, we know that along with the bird population declines and the 3 million figure that's so stark on the native plant populations, there's been articles about insect apocalypse and really steep insect populations declines. And so that's, again, another reason why we can talk about the importance of native plants to birds and other animals. The last slide before I get into some of the plants, and this is good plant suggestions, is thinking about how we do this. So not only the what to plant, but the how we're going about this whole thing. And the title I thought of was Landscaping for Life. And I think about that in terms of like when I'm walking in my neighborhood and I'll walk by a lawn, a well-manicured lawn that has maybe, a tea plant or 2 or something, and it's just silent and there's no movement, there's nothing going on. And then if you keep walking and you get to a lawn or somebody's yard that has more natives or maybe a natural area, all of a sudden the sound and the color and the movement and it's just a completely different life-sustaining place. So we want landscapes that are alive. And so starting out by, one principle I always think of is how can I do the least harm? And sometimes that's hard because I've done an awful lot of invasive removal and I always feel so bad, but that's a starting place. It was something I learned a lot about in doing permaculture and food gardening in Wisconsin with the movement towards not rototilling gardens because that destroys soil. Soil is a living organism and has all kinds of mycorrhizal connections and systems within the soil that need to be intact for plants to thrive. So just having that as sort of like an underlying principle of how can I do the least harm while I'm out in my landscape. And then from there, really thinking about right plant, right place. Everybody probably has heard that, and probably experienced it, and that's why it's wonderful that sometimes we can move plants and change the plan, because, which I've done tons of times, because they'll let us know if they're happy or not, right? And that's a good starting point, because when we're thinking about choices for native plants to support birds, to create a bird-friendly habitat, we need to be sure that it's a plant that's suited to the environment. I might really like, I'll just give an example from my yard. I might really like marlberry trees, because we have some at Florida Native Plants Nursery, and the pileated woodpeckers come in and feed on the berries and have a great time. But in my landscape, it's far too dry, and it's far too hot, and it's far too sunny, and it just would be miserable there. It wouldn't thrive. And as much as I want it, and as much as I know it's a great plant for birds, it's just not right for my landscape. Also, thinking about, let's see here. Oh, another thing I wanted to mention with the least harm was machines and CO2 emissions. And Tuesday mornings, I was doing kind of final touches on my presentation this morning. Our Tuesday mornings at my house are always eventful, because it's when my neighbor's landscape crew comes. And it's just deafening, and it's like an hour or more of just, you know, and just like this, it's like this swarm of big mowers and leaf blowers and weed whackers, and you all have probably heard the statistic about, you know, a lawnmower, you mow your lawn once, it's like driving to Tampa and back. That's how much CO2 is emitted just from that one gas-powered lawnmower. Leaf blowers have incredible environmental harms in terms of stirring up things in the soil that shouldn't be there, increasing allergies, you know, the impact on the user, the hearing loss, just the noise pollution, just so many layers. So whenever possible, I think it's important to think about, will I need a machine to maintain this plant that I want to put in my garden, or this type of garden that I'm designing? And if it's possible to try to avoid that or minimize it, then see what you can do to go that direction. Obviously, they have a place. Not everyone has like the physical ability or time, you know, to do everything by hand. I'm not saying that. It's just trying to minimize their use. They do have a place. Also, biodiversity. We talked about, well, this is a beautiful illustration of it. This is from the Florida Native Plant Nursery website, and it's an example of a residence that won an award. So that's another thing about Florida Native Plant Society. They have awards for different categories around the state each year, and this is someone's personal landscape, and it embodies a lot of the diversity and interests that we are talking about here. Plant in layers and clusters. So again, thinking about, you know, I'm going to put in not one, but a bunch of black-eyed Susans in this area, or a little cluster of Beatrice, or goldenrod, and make those layers that birds need. Layers are helpful to birds. You know, if we have short and medium and tall plants, they need different levels, because they all use different spaces. When they're searching for food, when they're perching, they might need to be higher. They need places to hide, places to nest, and all this is taking place at different levels. So if we have a really uniform lawn, it's not as helpful. Also, I know from birding that edge, like between two different areas, like on the edge of a woodland or the edge of a road, you'll always see a lot more birds, because it has all of those different levels and a lot going on. When you cluster plants together, it's easier for birds to see. There's more food in one place. It's easier for them to identify that as a food source. So if you think about like hummingbirds, having clusters of plants can be helpful for them to identify that that is a definite food source for them. Another principle to think about as we're going about planting native plants for birds is letting plants grow. So that gets back to right plant, right place, where you don't want to be over pruning. Like, I know this plant's going to be 20 feet tall and I want it to be 10, I'll just prune it. Because then you've got a lot of work for yourself, which is, aside, well, hopefully your native plants will be less work. But you also probably are cutting off flowers and fruits that the birds need. And the tips of the, of the growth that the plant needs to be healthy. We also want to think about leaving the leaves in dead wood. And so what that means is not removing all of the debris in your yard, but using it as a mulch. You certainly want to remove dead plants or diseased plants, but a lot of leaves, a lot of small sticks, other things can be left in place and serve a purpose. That can be habitat for insects, habitat for birds, hiding places, even cutting down stuff. We all know that fall, at least in places further north of here, there's always a lot of ads for fall cleanup. Clean up your garden, cut everything down and get ready for winter. Well, those plants in nature that would never happen. Right? They would never just be cut down. They have a function over the winter. The insects use them to live in. The birds use them to eat the insects. The birds eat those seeds all winter that are on those dead seed heads. Dead wood. We know about the importance of snags for birds. A snag is like a big dead tree. So if you go out birding, you'll always, the birders I know are always looking for snags or dead branches. It's the best place to get a good sight of a bird. They use them all the time for looking around, for looking for food, for looking for threats to them. That provides housing for so many really important birds. If you can, we all lost a lot of trees with the hurricane. If you can, leaving a dead tree or a dead tree stump. Some people just cut it down and leave, 10 to 20 feet, or leaving dead branches. That all contributes to the habitat and food that birds need. One thing I like to do when I'm hiking is to just move dead logs and see what's under them. And they're just brimming with life. It's an entire ecosystem with mold and fungus and beetles and worms and snakes, and they're just wonderful. So if you have the space and the inclination, leaving dead wood around is really important. And then the last element of landscaping for life would be to provide a water source. And that may be where you create a bog garden or a shallow pond. You may have a bird bath. You may just have some trays with water around that you change, so you don't get a lot of mosquitoes. But that's a water source for birds and for other animals. So let's get into the specific plants. So we're kind of shifting into the second part of the presentation where I'll talk about specific plants that are recommended. And these are just some superstars. Really, there are so many. And so many of the characteristics of the plants that I'm going to highlight are characteristic of other plants. If you are thinking about, native plants for birds, and how can I plant native plants in my home landscape, in a park that I'm volunteering at, or in a public place where I'm helping them decide on what kind of plants to get. Sometimes a good place to start is thinking about the trees. What are the key trees that are there? Well, Sabal palm, we'll start with that as a representative tree. It is one that works in so many landscapes because it's not really big like a live oak. It's incredibly adaptable, incredibly hardy. They're hurricane resistant. They're very long lived. The zones are up there. They do well in a variety of conditions, and they provide so much for birds. The blooms in the springtime, there's tiny white flowers, and if you've ever, I mean, you kind of need to be high up to see them, but sometimes you can see them down low, but they're just swarming with bees and with pollinators, just buzzing and alive. Food, the flowers turn into dark berries. They're food for a lot of mammals and birds. They're an incredibly important source of shelter, and most landscapers you may know, and some and will over prune them. Basically, they give what's called a hurricane cut, and that is incredibly damaging to the tree. It's like what I learned up in Wisconsin, where with bulbs, you never want to tear off the green vegetation after the blooms are gone, because all that energy in the leaves has to go back in the bulb. And it's the same principle with palm fronds. If you cut them all off, all that energy and all that they're a food source of creating food for the plant is not going to be able to go into the plant. So over time, that is you're making it really tough for that sabal palm to survive by overcutting it. And recommendations are, to leave it as it is, because those dead palm fronds create great habitat for birds, for bats, for snakes, for lizards. I found flying squirrels. It's flying squirrel time, but has anybody ever found a flying squirrel in their sabal palm? Yeah, there's so much just going on in those spaces and in those crevices. It's really like a little ecosystem in and of itself. Birds make nests in sabal palms. It's a nesting site for the scrub jay, for northern mockingbird, for American crow. A recommendation, if you don't want the dead fronds hanging out quite as much, is just to do like a 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, right? But definitely not that little. I think of like a baby. You know how little babies, they make like a little ponytail on top of their head or something. It just looks so unnatural. Yeah. The shelter and nesting material from sabal palms. When I moved to Florida, somebody was telling me about them, about how they use that stuff in between the boots for starting campfires when they went camping. And they called it monkey hair or monkey, I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah, monkey hair.
But, pardon?
Monkey hair.
Monkey
It
hair,
burns
yeah.
quite well. I had a tree get hit by lightning, and it was unburned sabal palmettos 3 weeks ago, and they're going to survive. But boy, it went up.
The monkey hair did.
Yeah, it went up really big.
And so birds use that for nesting material. They provide shelter for caracaras, cardinals, doves, flycatchers, gnatcatchers, hawks, hummingbirds, kinglets, mockingbirds, shrikes, wrens, all kinds of birds. All right, so sabal palm, excellent landscape plants. If you have one, take great care of it. If you don't have enough or you want one, beautyberry, everybody knows this, and it is just like the beautyberry time. Here we have a female black-throated blue warbler eating the berries, but they are a great food source for birds. I put some of the specifics here just in terms of what people would consider for, is this something that could go in my garden? This is a very adaptable plant. It's relatively fast growing, nectar for butterflies and bees, and food for birds and mammals. It's relatively hurricane wind resistant. And let's see I'll see if this works, but all right. I'm sorry that the linking to another screen so we can see what I wanted to pull up there isn't working, but the Audubon Plants database is a great resource to see, what plants are good for birds. So and maybe I can send this link or something to you all, and we'll figure it out. But on that link, up comes a screen about you can select beautyberry, and then they have little pictures of all the different birds that eat the seeds. And you click, and there's like 6 of them. And then you click, and there's 6 more, and you click, and there's 6 more. It is such a great source of food for birds, and of course, perching, shelter, a place to hide, all different kinds of things. All right. Also, firebush, very probably familiar to you all. One of those key kind of super plants. This is a semi-evergreen shrub. A little north of here, it's maybe more deciduous or be more harmed by frost, but here they do really well. Basically, these are the kinds of specifics that you will want to know for your landscape. But if you have one, or if you've seen one, if you've been to a pollinator garden or a butterfly garden, you know that they are so popular, not only with butterflies, but also hummingbirds. At the Florida Native Plants Nursery, we have several in our landscape, and we have the ruby-throated hummingbirds are migrating now. And we have them come in regularly to visit the fire bushes in our landscapes.
I have a question on that. Would you, if you have some non-native firebush in your yard, would you recommend replacing that plant with a native?
If you had the budget, I think you could. There are, and what you're referencing is that some firebush is a non-native type, and that the concern about those is that they could potentially cross-pollinate and hybridize with native firebush, or have a potential become invasive. And so if you have the means to do that, that's great. I think.
I'm planning on doing that too.
Another
question on that is, I can't remember, is the native one the smaller leaf or the bigger leaf? Is it not leaf plants? What's the difference?
There's a lot of different things to look at, but I did find some resources online about, kind of to look at what the specifics are. I know generally, I don't know, do you?
There's a woman, and she puts stuff online. I think she's called Florida Girl, or I don't know what she's called, but she.
The Wild Floridian?
Yeah, she went into it specifically, the stem color,
The flower colors that
and for me, I find it's the shape of the bush. The non-native gets very wide and round, and the native is more tall and thin, more of a tree, where the other is more of a bush. And I have both, and I think they have cross-pollinated, and I don't know.
and the growth habit, I mean, that could depend on growing conditions, but I've heard, like the native maybe has somewhat more reddish leaves or reddish blooms, but I mean, yeah,
Blue color, yeah. There should be no yellow in the native plant bloom. It should all be red or orange.
And so that's definitely optimal. I think that, that said, thank you for bringing that up, because one of the articles that I referenced for this presentation was the Hamilia, their Latin name, the Hamilia mess or something, or the Hamilia debacle or something. It was kind of funny about how it was like, I know there's all these non-natives and it's causing all these problems. So something definitely to check for when you're purchasing, something to look up information about if you're identifying what is in your landscape and if you want to consider replacing it. Coral honeysuckle. This is another superstar. Oh my goodness. It was on the, I sort of photoshopped it in clumsily on the title slide, but it is a great vine. It's one that you can grow on a trellis, but it has kind of a somewhat woody structure. So some people just let it do its thing and just let it kind of make a mound, almost like a ground cover or a weeping shrub. They provide nectar for not only hummingbirds and butterflies, but even Baltimore orioles, in terms of the plants for birds. We know hummingbirds love trumpet-shaped flowers that have that nectar inside. It creates fruits. They go from green to red. Those are eaten by finches, thrushes, cardinals, probably many more. If you look at that Audubon Native Plants website, it'll have little images of all the different birds that feed on particular plants and honey, or honeysuckle. What you really want to avoid, though, is if you're thinking about honeysuckle, is avoiding the Japanese honeysuckle and other types that are not native. Always, a good rule of thumb, and a lot of you probably know this, is just always looking at not the common name, but the scientific name of the Latin name, because common names, some of the plants have so many common names, sometimes people come in the nursery, I don't even know what they're talking about. It's just like, oh my gosh. Dotted horseman is one of them. It's got so many different names, but we can get really confused, and then we finally get down to the scientific name and we're like, yes, that's it. Okay. All right, other plants. Again, I'm just highlighting some superstars and a variety of plants. If you're thinking, what do I want to do to create my little bird Eden here? Fakahatchee grass. It is, you've probably seen it in parks. It's gotten some more common, planted out in kind of public landscapes, but it's just this gorgeous clumping, sort of weaving, very hardy, very adaptable. This time of year is the best time of year because it sends out these incredible stalks that have these little dangly seeds and the glows, and they just sort of shimmer. It is just a gorgeous plant. We planted, Audubon has a major initiative for plants for birds, and they actually provided grants. And so with the Venice Area Audubon Society, we bought over several years native plants, and we've been gradually improving the landscape around the Rookery Pond in Venice. And there we planted Fakahatchee grass, and that has become an incredible not only food source for the seeds for the songbirds, but also habitat. We had black-bellied whistling ducks nesting underneath them because they have, they just bend over and create these little, almost like a little passageway or a little nesting area underneath that's really well hidden for them to do that, and other creatures. So those are the superstars. Those are the superstars I wanted to highlight for this presentation. There are so many more, and a lot of guides. I brought quite a bit of materials and guides. One of the materials that I handed out on a lot of the tables, it's one page, and it's called Plant Attached for Pollinators. So again, thinking about, and this would go for birds as well, kind of adapt these concepts, but this is a publication from the Florida Native Plants Nursery. The idea is get a selection of plants, kind of like we saw today, a tree, a couple shrubs, maybe a vine, maybe some lower plants, some wildflowers, things like that, and create your little area, create your little little landscape for birds, and see what happens as it grows and develops. Pop some dead branches and water and dead leaves and things like that in there, and the birds will come. I wanted to just, this is the slide that we saw at the beginning, but I just, again, wanted to revisit that and those concepts of the different layers and the different levels and all the different elements in addition to native plants that will make your landscape of great benefit to the native birds here. Let's see, there's a super cute video I wanted to show that just kind of is fun and gets us going, but it's not gonna work, so we will go ahead to, I'd like to open it up for the last part of the presentation and hear from, I know we have many different, people with lots of experience with gardening for birds, maybe less, maybe questions or ideas, but what are your ideas about native plants and habitat for birds here in this area? And, what would you like to share with the group?
How do you best propagate a beautyberry? Because I've got a really magnificent one. And is it easier with the seeds? Do you get them wet? Or I think you told me you can also take
I just kind of stick it in the ground and they grow.
Yeah.
Really easy.
And
Look for babies near yours.
Okay.
And that's what I was gonna say. Mine, the ones that are in the landscape where I moved to, they're doing it on their own. I've had two, come up that are planted maybe by birds or maybe wind scattered. But thank you for bringing that up. That's another benefit of having birds to your landscape is that birds will do that. They have these mutually beneficial. I talked a lot about how birds benefit from the plants, but the plants also benefit from the birds. Many plants' survival is dependent on the birds eating the seeds and digesting that outer part and then leaving them in places and distributing those plants over the landscape. So that's a great example of what might happen with beautyberry.
So what was that, seeds? Doing it by seed, okay.
Yeah. Once they're, once they're falling off the plant,
Right.
You could just plant them. I don't think you need to go. But there is information online about, different processes that you may need to propagate plants. Did you have a?
I did, so I don't have HOA, the property around me, it's not developed yet. And, but there's for sale signs everywhere. And I've been having to cut the pepper trees all back from my yard. They're coming in, invading into my yard. As I'm cutting these pepper trees back, I'm finding beautyberries and lantana and passion vines. And so I'm snitching all those plants and bringing them home. The lots are just gonna be mowed over. I'm just so excited. I'm like, ooh, look what I got today.
Yeah, plant salvage and rescue. There was the Northport Conservancy. They do conservation of sites in Northport, and they have organized a group when they know, a site, they get permission from the owners to salvage plants, frankly, to use those native plants for the landscapes.
So what about the county spraying for mosquitoes? I have these big patches of Biden's in my front yard. I just let it go, and I mow around it so the neighbors think I am maintaining my yard. But Friday night there goes the helicopter, and Saturday morning I had hardly any pollinators out there.
Yeah, and that's something. Thank you for bringing that up as well. That's something. I talked about not using as many machines, but obviously pesticides are harming bird populations, one of the many factors, and the decline of insects. And we know that mosquito sprays, mosquito Joe or whatever, that kills all insects. It doesn't select for mosquitoes, and neither does the county's spraying.
So how do we, what can we do? There has to be a collective voice we can present.
Yeah.
We end up ingesting this poison. It goes into our water. How do they not understand this?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's so many points of pollution. I think where I live in Venice, there's a waterway that they regularly just have a big tank and they just have a big sprayer and they just spray it with Rodeo, which is glyphosate, regularly, like semi-monthly. Just everything, and this is the water, and they're pouring. Yeah, no.
They've got to be consulting with people who are educated in the results. I don't understand how it can be allowed.
Yeah,
In South
no,
Venice, they were getting some pressure about all the canals were filled with debris and flooded in the storms. You and I are just, I didn't talk to you afterwards. Resources, how much money the county has to address the problems, they probably adopt more cost-effective solutions that get it cut quick, and then there's not enough outcry for the broader implications. But this sounds like a great campaign that maybe you want to initiate in the county. And I bet you have a lot of.
I am fired up, I really am fired up. Just send everybody a can of law. If you wanna go outside, spray yourself.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot of just kind of, like budgetary realities, and that's what I've heard from the county side, is just that they need stormwater, their job is to keep those clear, and if they're not clear, then there could be flooding, and then, and so they just have to do what's the quickest and easiest way, but it'd be very short term.
And if you quit cutting your palms, then you'll have bats, and you won't have to have any mosquitoes.
So this kind of brings up a concern that I had coming here today is the people that know about how to manage the land have the right intention. They know what should be done, and trimming the palms is the one most recent in my experience. So I'm talking to my HOA landscape committee chair, and she said, oh yeah, we're gonna do native plants, and oh yeah, I wanna do all this. And then she hands it off to the landscaper, and the landscaper says, oh yeah, I even gave her the paper from Extension of showing the sable palms being trimmed poorly and all that kind of stuff. Oh, this guy does 9 to 3. He said, no problem. Well, of course, they all come out looking like the little ponytail on the baby's head. So, is there a certification? How do we find landscapers that know what to do?
Yeah.
I always get arborists.
I was just gonna say the
I
same thing, a
always
certified
get an
arborist.
We have an oak tree that sometimes, after eating, needs more.
And if you have a contract with your landscaper, be sure that things like that are in the contract. That's what our HOA finally did. The landscape guy reads the contract word for word, makes sure that all the details that we want are in the contract, and he holds their feet to the fire.
Okay. You're right, that's where the money hits the road.
Exactly.
50% of the people in your HOA.
Some of it too is hiring a certified landscaper as opposed to just Johnny Does Yards, so.
But is there a certification landscape for landscapers?
Yeah.
Extension?
Say again?
At any rate, I'll have to look into that, because
I had my trees recently done by an arborist because I have a heritage oak that can only be touched by, and I had a good experience, so I can share with you. They weren't cheap. They didn't rip my head off, but they weren't cheap either.
Yeah, okay.
And that's another thing about, integrated, pest management or stuff, they talk about that, and just using maybe herbicides or pesticides in very limited ways, in very specific ways. What I learned coming here, where I live, the person who they were using as their landscaper, I asked him what he was spraying, and he had no idea. He said he just buys it, and he has no idea what the chemical is. Does
He
it
has
know
to be
about this?
certified to use it.
Oh.
No, I mean, that should be.
I mean that's the requirement, but it's not enforced. And so I think the point about asking your landscaper a lot of questions, or asking the people doing that work a lot of questions about, do you have that certification? What do you know? What do you use? How do you use it? Well, maybe get you to a better person.
Yeah.
It's called IPM.
Even natural sprays don't necessarily mean safe. Arsenic is a natural.
Yeah, a lot of compounds are natural that are toxic.
My question is, I'm sure everyone in this room supports all organizations that you suggested earlier. But other than money, what can we do other than voting for somebody who we know what their platform is? I don't know what else to do, you know, and I really don't. So what suggestions do you have? Do you have a list of people who are very pro-environment and that we can, you know, say, yeah, you know, please do this, please do that? I don't know who to go to.
I think you remember when you vote.
Oh, I do have.
You know, I mean,
But
I'm
how
just
do you
saying.
find out? Because sometimes they may say something, but they don't, you know, they do it to get the vote, but necessarily don't follow up with it.
It used to be a lot easier because I did the same thing. I would see what they said, but then I would actually look and see how they voted. And over the last few years, it's been very difficult. They want me to like buy a subscription to see, and I feel like that should be public access. But you have to see how they're voting. You know, if you're for X, are you actually voting? Or are you, negotiating because you want this state to do this for you? And
I'd also say go to the meetings, because these county and city commissioners, they are under heavy pressure for development. And they may have the best of intentions, but when you come down to a thumbs up or thumbs down, they have to rely on people speaking up in the public comment times during the meetings and that sort of thing. And I'll also say, subscribe to your local newspaper, the Gondolier or something like that, so a light is shown on these people, and read it and comment back to people, you know, who are sitting in seats of power, decision makers. It's not just the people in the city councils. You really have to get more involved than, I used to work for the Corps of Engineers, so I have a pretty good idea what it means to be under development pressure. And by the time it comes to issuing the permit, or like this place up on Laurel Road with the Publix compound and stuff like that, that's conservation land that's being converted zoning to commercial development. That should not happen. No, it shouldn't. But people are not at the meeting speaking.
It's the money. It's
the
money. You know, and that because I've been here 5 years and I can't believe some of the things that have gone on.
Yeah.
I live off of 776 and we fought a development. There were so many residents that went. It's a plot of land between two subdivisions. It's floodplain. It's everything that would be great for, it was perfect for birds, everything. But they're putting in storage units. There were so many people at the meetings. We all wore red shirts. They had to cancel the meeting that we were at. We were at the meeting at the police department up in, I guess it's Venice, Englewood, I'm not even sure where the lines are. And there were so many people there that they closed the meeting. They sent us home.
They already had decided.
They had already decided, but it's the money. And I think the other thing is,
it's corruption.
Well, the other thing is that we personally have to take the responsibility for doing these things, whether it is not using the pesticides, and maybe it is catching with other people if you say, you know, I've decided not to do this because I think it's my little way of taking care of this. It's just like, you know, all the other things in your life. If you have a neighbor that does a great job in their yard, it's catching. Other people say, theirs looks so nice, gee, we have to try this. I mean, how you convince other people to do it, I don't know. But I don't know that our communities would accept the cost, the physical cost of doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's just it. We are used to having things less expensive and all of that. And when you look at the cost between doing it this way or this way, I don't know, when it hits our pocketbooks, it's a hard choice to make, and I have to be really honest about that.
Well, I really appreciate the perspectives that you all have brought up, and you've really spoken well to that, that point of having that broader, kind of long-range view. Again, we really need to encourage that not short-term thinking, but that very long-term thinking. And, in the spirit of keeping calm and plenty chaos, you've got to be in it for the long haul, kind of think of where you're going to focus, what's an area that really excites you. For some people, it's local, for some people, it's state, federal, the national level, identifying the people who are making change, supporting those organizations, supporting advocacy organizations, and getting involved in it yourself as you are able. My background actually is in social work and community organizing, and so for me, that is an incredibly powerful way of doing that. My plan for my landscape is, what I did in Wisconsin is took out all the lawn and made a native prairie in my front lawn, and just, this was 20 years ago, but people, walking by, we had a big porch and we just have discussions and we talk about it and we hear about it. And actually, so a lot of the milkweed, it has those little fibers, and it just kind of spread to other people's lawns, and they'd say, "Oh wow, I've got milkweed too," and it just, it literally it spreads like that. And what I'd like to do here, where I live, it's not very native friendly, but little by little, right? I want to get a little free library and put all these brochures in it and just talk to people about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. But again, not stopping there, because my little corner of the world, the whole world matters, right? And so, at the same time, doing what I can. City council here in Venice is a lot different than Wisconsin, but I do go and I do listen and I watch the agendas, and maybe even forming groups. I mean, community groups have started to, in HOAs, at the nursery, we get a lot of people who live in. Oh, geez.
No way it's playing.
Now it's playing. Oh my God, my little video is playing, so. I know, the pictures, it's just not the same, right? We have to like imagine it. She's signaling that it's time to go, but anyways, I think that's a great note to end on, because it is overwhelming, but it's also extremely hopeful. Like, I cannot believe the number of people who come into Florida Nursery and how much it's grown and changed and how much people know. All these customers come in and know way more than I do, and I'm not relatively new, but I work there, but it's just amazing, the increase in interest and the increase in what people are doing and how things are changing. And again, seeing that kind of like long arc of things, I think is helpful. That they may be a certain way now, but stay calm and just keep working at it.
For those of you that live in Venice, at 5 o'clock tonight, there's going to be a Zoom meeting. If you live along within the Alligator Creek watershed, which I do, Zoom meeting 5 o'clock tonight, where they're going to be discussing what their plans are for the Alligator Creek watershed restoration. So I'm going to watch it. I'm hoping they give you some information of where you can reach out afterwards with comments.
I would also say that
Sarasota, I don't know, I go to a lot of meetings and somebody, and I actually got it, they reminded me, I got an email from SarasotaCounty.org.
Yeah, just go to
Yeah,
that.
if you Google Sarasota County Alligator Creek Restoration, they would probably come up, because there are a group of people that have been working on the Alligator Creek proper. And that's the group that it's probably with.
the other thing to talk to you about, how do you combat developers and all that? And talk about long-term things, show up to the meetings. But the other thing is, some of these old elephants have got to die. What's the next generation doing? Because if you talk to my kid, I've been in solar and green building for 30 years, and I would go to local schools, especially like Pineview, and talk to the science teacher, they'd invite me in and we'd talk about how does solar power work, and they'd do little experiments and all that sort of stuff. And because they're interested in it and they get it. You know, my son who's bought a house over in Cocoa, he's now, I went over and did a planning project, but now they're going, oh,